Today's talk is called And Still I Rise. This is the fourth in the series on rising higher. If you recall, in the first week of this month, Reverend Pam spoke about reaching higher for greater understanding. And she spoke about understanding our place in the universe as well as understanding ourselves, because it's by going within and looking at ourselves in a critical way that we come to better understand where we are currently and where we want to be. In the second week, it was transcend and include. And that spoke to, Reverend Pam spoke to rising above our fears, recognizing that is part of our history, that is part of who we are, but rising above it. In the third week, last week, when the going gets rocky, Reverend Pam spoke about the importance of perseverance, about not allowing things to slow us down. But today, it's And Still I Rise. And this actually comes from a poem by Maya Angelou. And if you can put that one up, please, you can see how As I Rise repeats throughout her poem. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise. Now, she was speaking about the African American women involved in the civil rights movement of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It continues to this day, in fact, but it's applicable to all of us, that we can still rise. One of the things about rising is that sometimes we find our way blocked. We find obstacles that we simply cannot get around. And when that happens, it causes us to pause. Sometimes we continue banging our head against that brick wall. Other times we get some insight and recognize that maybe what's blocking our way is the way to where we want to be. And I'll explain that in just a few. What's blocking our way towards greater understanding, self-understanding, and greater wisdom. So to kind of emphasize this point, I wanted to share with you a story. And it's a story that comes out of the Taoist tradition. And it's about a Chinese farmer and his horse. Now, the story is about 2,000 years old, and it's been repeated many times, and you probably have heard it before yourselves. But I think it has many levels of meaning. And in case you haven't heard it before, it kind of goes like this. In ancient China, there was a farmer with his family, and they had a prize horse that would pull the cart from the to and fro. That horse was the farmer's prized possession. But one day he left the latch on the gate open, and the horse ran away. Well, his neighbors, hearing about this, came over to say, "Oh, that's terrible. It's such a sad thing." And the farmer says, "Well, who knows what's good and what's bad?" And that puzzled the neighbors. Well, it did until the next day, when the horse returned with 6 wild stallions following behind. And the neighbors came back to the farmer and said, "This is fantastic. How did you know?" "Well, who knows what's good and what's bad?" Well, soon after that, the farmer's son went out to try to tame one of those wild stallions and got kicked in the leg and broke his leg. And can you imagine what happened next? The neighbors returned and said, "Oh, that's terrible what happened to your son." And all he could say was, "Who knows what's good and what's bad?" Well, soon after, agents of the emperor's army came to the town to conscript young men to go fight in the war. And there was only one person who was not taken away, and that was the young man with the broken leg. And so the neighbors, when they saw the farmer, said, "Well, that's a good thing." Well, who knows what's good and what's bad? Now, the story goes on and on like that, where there are ups and downs, and the farmer maintains a steady state of mind, while the neighbors ride that emotional roller coaster of joy and elation, followed by sadness and depression. And so I guess there are multiple lessons to be learned from this. I would say lesson number one is that uh, bad things can proceed from good things, and and good things can proceed from bad things. Within every experience, there's the potential for the opposite to be revealed. A second lesson is, you might call it the the Buddhist take on it, and that is, don't get attached to a particular outcome. That is to say, when the horse ran away, the farmer didn't go into the pity pit. Rather, that he stayed calm and realized, we'll see what happens with this. And sure enough, the horse did return. He still recognized the good, but he was not emotionally caught up in the circumstance. The third lesson that came to me as I was reading this is that we have to move past the labels of good and bad. We oftentimes react emotionally to things that happen in our life experience, but when we can see that there are not necessarily all good or all bad circumstances, we become less concerned with the outcome and more interested in watching the ongoing evolution of what is happening. In fact, the Sufi poet Rumi had the same thought, and maybe that's where it came to me, when he, in one of his poems, says, "Beyond the ideas of good and bad, there lies a field, and I will meet you there." He, Rumi, and he, the farmer, were both able to see the bigger picture by recognizing that we watch how things unfold without necessarily getting on board the emotional roller coaster. When we see the bigger picture, we realize that there are events that happen in our lives that we have no control over. All we can control is our reaction to those events. It's not experience that matters. It's what you learn from the experience that matters. And so if I'd ask you, would you please put up Wayne Dyer's slide? He had that same thought when he said, with everything that has happened to you, you can either feel sorry for yourself, that is, hold yourself a pity party, or treat what has happened as a gift. Everything is either an opportunity to grow or an obstacle to keep you from growing. You get to choose. So, Wayne and I are on the same sheet of music here. We recognize that it's up to us how we respond. And we have the opportunity to reflect and learn from each of the experiences that come our way. And so I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I'm going to ask you to take a moment, and if you're comfortable, close your eyes, and think back on your life. Have you ever had an unhappy experience that, in retrospect, you realize that led to a far better outcome? It may have been something major, like losing a job. It may have been the end of a relationship. Okay, I would say that it is, welcome back to the room. I can say that this is something that happens to everyone. If we really stop and think about it, you have to acknowledge there are some things that perhaps were unpleasant at the time they occurred, but they led to a far better life experience. Sometimes when you lose a job, you're available to take a better one, or go on to a different career path altogether. Sometimes when a relationship ends, you're available as well to a far better one than you would have had you stayed in the one before. But it doesn't have to be anything as big as that. It could be something very small. Just this morning, I was running late. And every time that happens to me, I've come to realize that, wait a minute, I can get angry, or maybe I can think about what accident I would have missed, what mishap might have happened if I were on time. There's all kinds of situations like that where the things that are what I formerly considered you with stress and with self-criticism, I come to realize maybe, just maybe, it was for my better good, for my higher good. So you might ask, and it'd be fair to ask, is it possible that every bad thing is really a good thing if you wait around long enough? Well, who knows what's good and bad? Who knows? What I do know is that we all have something inside of us, something that is itching to get out. A bit like a blade of grass pushing its way through a crack in the sidewalk or between bricks on a path. There is something inside of us, each and every one of us, that motivates us, that creates in us a desire to express ourselves, to grow spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. You can call it the spark of life. You can call it the universal mind. You can call it divine creativity. You can call it whatever you want to. What matters is that you recognize there is such a thing, that there is inside of us an unstoppable, inexhaustible power that is urging us forward. It powers our continuing evolvement. It powers our unfoldment of becoming the people we were meant to be. That something inside is a divine presence. That something inside is always available to us. It's always with us in good times and in bad. It's there in our moments of glory as well as in our days of despair. So it's hard for me to see God in tragedy. God is there. And sometimes it's the tragedy we bring upon ourselves. Sometimes it's a tragedy that we have no control over. My personal story of tragedy was, I'll share with you now, it's when my first wife left me for another man. You can imagine how that hurt. You can imagine how I felt. I threw the biggest pity party there ever was. For months, I cried myself to sleep at night. For months, I wondered what I had done wrong, how it had gone wrong. Why this happened to me, Lord? But over time, the wounds healed. And interesting enough, I had a dream one night, and I remember this vividly because as soon as I woke up, I had the aha moment. I had been dreaming about walking alongside of the Potomac River, which has lots of little bays and eddies in it, like dead end uh, bends, and I don't know what you call them in the wetland side. Anyway, I was walking along and walked past one of these dead ends arms of the river that ended in a swamp, actually, which smelled bad and looked bad and had mosquitoes flying all over it. Um, and I thought to myself, that stagnant water, it's like the river's dying. And upon awakening, I had the idea, the inspiration, I'll call it that I was seeing myself as that river. I was not in the mainstream, which was fresh and healthy and moving forward. I was stuck in that backwater with the mosquitoes and the snakes. And I didn't want to be there anymore. And I came up with a mantra as quick as a snap. That which doesn't change soon stagnates. That which stagnates soon dies. And I made a commitment to myself. I was energized by this dream, energized by this revelation. And it was a divine revelation. I have no doubt about it now. I didn't know it at the time, but that God inside me said, wake up, wake up, and learn from your experience. And time went by. And I got out of that party, I got out of my self-pity, and moved forward with my life. And it took a long time afterwards for me to finally be able to look at what happened dispassionately, without getting caught up in the emotion, without having an attachment to this outcome or that. And I realized I was pretty controlling. I was pretty immature. I regret that about myself, my actions then. And I no longer held any ill will, no longer felt any kind of anger or disappointment or anything really, other than the kind of love you share with all others. That I, in my heart and soul, wished her well and wished him well, and hoped that their lives together were better than ours had been. And so this is a kind of story that I would say typifies the journey that we're all on, the journey that takes us through that emotional turmoil. And I encourage you to consider pausing, thinking back to what you had envisioned a few moments ago, and ask yourself, what did I learn from this? What can I take forward in my life? Michael Beckwith was pretty insightful. He's had his own ups and downs, as you know. And he says that the spirit within us is so powerful, it can rise even after the most devastating of circumstances. How very true. If you think about it, the manifest creator of the entire universe, it has the power. It has the power. And it shares that with us. So, as a way of wrapping it up, I need to read to you what was in the crib notes for today's sermon. That comes from the Center for Spiritual Living, and it's just too good to paraphrase. Despite the appearance and experience of obstacles and adversity, the way of life, with a capital L, is always rising, expanding, and evolving. Every part of your journey is useful and necessary for that which Spirit wants to express as you. No experience is wasted. No opportunity goes by. All is good, though it might not seem it so at the time. As you rise up into a life that works, Spirit uses you to help others rise. This is how we create a world that works for everyone. Let's take this to prayer. I know that there is one source, one mind, one breath breathing us all. This one presence, which some call God, some Allah, some Yahweh, and 1,000 other names, 1,000 other languages, all speaking to the same truth. The truth that behind all appearances, behind all experiences, behind all creation, there is one cause, one life. And in this one, we are all individual expressions. And that this one loving, caring, giving spirit is here with me, it's here with you, it's here with everyone we've ever met, and everyone we'll ever meet. God expressing as those we consider foes or adversaries or friends or lovers. God expressing as people on the street, on the television, at the beach, in the cars, in the cities, in the towns, in the forests and the jungles and the deserts. It's all one God. And this God has unending power, limitless power to bring into our lives all that we need to evolve. Yet this evolution requires us to participate also, for us to do our inner work, to know what is the message here, what is the lesson I learn, what can I take from this experience, be it good or bad, and apply in my life later on. It need not be a catastrophe. It need not be a moment of ecstasy. Even the little things have lessons for us all. And I commit to keeping my eyes and ears open, keeping my mind and heart open, keeping my life available to God to use as it will, to bring forth this world that works for everyone by being an example of love. To show all those who hear me, all those who see me, and everyone I may encounter in this life and beyond, that love heals all wounds, that love provides whatever's needed, that love is the answer. And I'm so grateful for this knowledge. So happy to have stumbled upon it. And I'm grateful for those who have brought me here through good experiences and bad. For this is where I was meant to be. And this is where you were meant to be, hearing these words in this place and beyond, because this is the message that God is sharing now. Love to you, my children. Love to you all. I release this, knowing it is already so, as together we say. And so it is. It is.